Trouble is not the end, it is the moment the camera zooms in on your face, catching the sweat on your forehead, the tremble in your hands, the disbelief in your eyes as the world you built begins to wobble beneath your feet. It's the sound of a door slamming shut behind you, leaving you in a room you never wanted to enter, but suddenly must survive. It's the scene where everything looks lost, the part of the story where people whisper that you won't make it, where even your own reflection seems unsure. Yet in that darkness, something stirs. A heartbeat, a spark, a reminder that endings and beginnings often look identical at first glance. Trouble doesn't signal collapse. It invites awakening. It forces you to feel every emotion you've been avoiding, to confront every shadow you tried to outrun. And in that confrontation, something inside you shifts. It's in the quiet after the storm that you realize clarity doesn't come dressed in comfort. It arrives with sharp edges, with cold winds, with a truth you can't ignore anymore. You start to see things differently. The people who cheered for you, the ones who only pretended, and the moments you took for granted. Trouble forces you to clean the fog off the mirror and look directly at the person you've become. There's no background music, no applause, just you standing in a room full of consequences. But strangely, it's here that the world begins to make sense. Clarity slips in through the cracks, whispering answers you were too busy to hear before, guiding you toward choices you never realized you needed to make. Trouble didn't break you. It stripped away the noise so you could finally see yourself clearly. And then comes the scene where you rise, not dramatically, not with a sudden burst of power, but slowly, like light returning to a room that has been dark for too long. You start piecing yourself together, picking up the fragments of moments that once felt like failures, and suddenly they begin to look like lessons. You notice patterns, recognize mistakes, and understand the weight of your silence, your fears, your hesitations. Trouble becomes a teacher, harsh but honest, pushing you to grow in ways comfort never could. You step out of the shadows with new awareness, realizing that every setback was shaping you, carving out the stronger version of you who was always meant to emerge. The redemption arc begins quietly, with a single decision to keep going. But clarity is not gentle. It demands sacrifice. It asks you to walk away from what you once clung to say goodbye to habits that numbed you, to people who drained you, to versions of yourself that can no longer survive the journey ahead. This is the part of the movie where the music shifts, where the world grows colder, but your resolve grows hotter. You feel the burn of change, the ache of letting go, the sting of stepping into unfamiliar territory. Yet every step pulls you closer to the person you were meant to be. Trouble didn't arrive to punish you, it arrived to redirect you. The road isn't smooth, but it's real. And in that realism, clarity strengthens your spine, sharpens your focus, and prepares you for the future you once doubted you could handle. And finally, trouble becomes the turning point, the moment the story changes direction. You walk through the remnants of what you thought was the end, only to discover it was the doorway to everything you needed. The sun doesn't rise suddenly. It creeps in golden and cautious, illuminating the path ahead. You breathe differently now, deeper, fuller, as though your lungs have finally remembered what it means to hope. Trouble gave you clarity, and clarity gave you power, not the loud kind that demands attention, but the quiet kind that changes destinies. You stand taller, not because the world has become easier, but because you have become stronger. You look ahead with eyes that have seen darkness and still choose light. And in that choice, your story transforms. Leadership is tested only when everything starts falling apart, when the lights flicker, the room shakes, and the people who once stood confidently behind you suddenly look uncertain. It's in that moment when the world you built begins to tilt, that the true weight of responsibility settles on your shoulders. You can almost hear your heartbeat echoing in the silence after bad news crashes into your life, like a wave hitting stone. This is the part of the story where the camera lingers on your eyes, capturing the fear you refuse to show the world. Leadership in its purest form is not loud or perfect. It is raw, trembling, determined. It's the breath you take before stepping forward, even when every instinct begs you to step back. And in that step, in that moment of choosing courage over collapse, the testing begins. You begin to feel the pressure tightening around you, not as a burden, but as a forge. Everything starts moving faster, problems multiplying, voices rising, expectations crashing into you like storms you weren't trained to weather. People expect you to have answers, even when your hands are shaking, even when your thoughts are scattered. This is the point where the world stops clapping and starts questioning. The loyalty of others becomes fragile, the path ahead becomes blurry, and the plans you once trusted now crumble in your grasp. But in this chaos, leadership reveals itself, not in flawless decisions, but in your refusal to disappear, in the way you steady yourself when the ground beneath you cracks, in the way you breathe through the panic and whisper to yourself, "I'm still here." Then comes the moment when solitude wraps around you like a cold wind, isolating you from the crowd that once praised your strength. Leadership has a way of placing you in the quietest rooms at the loudest times. You find yourself replaying every choice, every step, every promise made in brighter days. The shadows feel heavier, the doubts louder, yet something in you begins to shift. This is the turning point in every redemption story, when the character realizes that falling apart doesn't mean failure, it means transformation. You start listening more deeply, thinking more clearly, and seeing beyond the panic. The world around you still feels unsteady, but inside something roots itself. You begin to understand that leadership isn't about control, it's about endurance, presence, and the courage to face the fire without running. Slowly, you rise into a new version of yourself, not polished, not perfect, but powerful in ways you weren't before. Every challenge now feels like a mirror reflecting your strength back at you. The criticism doesn't crush you, it carves you. The mistakes don't define you, they refine you. You walk differently, speak differently, decide differently, because the person emerging from the chaos is no longer the one who entered it. You stop trying to hold everything together and start learning how to rebuild, piece by piece, choice by choice. Leadership now becomes less about being followed and more about becoming someone worth following. And the world, though still turbulent, begins to respond to your steady fire, the kind that can't be extinguished, even in the darkest storms. And as things continue to break around you, something surprising happens. You don't. The world may not recognize the change yet, but you feel it in the way you stand taller, in the way your voice no longer shakes, in the way your eyes reflect a deeper resolve. Everything falling apart has become the training ground that shaped your resilience. Leadership isn't what you were before the storm, it's who you became inside it. And now, as the pieces of your life lie scattered, you start picking them up with new wisdom, new strength, and a new understanding of what it truly means to carry responsibility. You don't wait for applause or recognition. You simply keep moving, keep choosing, keep rising. Because you now know that leadership is not proven in peace, but in the moments when the world is breaking and you refuse to break with it. The world will doubt you before it believes in your comeback, and it always begins the same way, with whispers behind your back, with people exchanging glances when your name is mentioned, with the quiet assumption that your chapter has ended. It's the moment in the movie when the crowd walks away, when the lights dim and the soundtrack softens into something low and aching. You feel the weight of every mistake, every failure, every wound you tried to hide. You hear their doubts louder than your own heartbeat. But what they don't realize is that this silence, this isolation, is where comebacks are born. It's in the emptiness of being underestimated that your fire begins to breathe again. And though the world may not see it yet, beneath the ashes of who you were, something is beginning to rise. There comes a point where the doubt of others seeps into your own bones, making you question whether they're right, whether you've truly fallen too far to climb again. You replay memories like broken film reels, the moments where you stumbled, the choices that cost you everything, the nights you stayed awake wondering if life had already decided your ending. But hidden inside those moments is a truth sharper than any criticism. Doubt only has power if you listen to it. Slowly you start to reclaim pieces of yourself, like gathering scattered fragments after a storm. Your hands shake, your voice trembles, but your determination grows. You begin rebuilding in the quiet, long before anyone is watching, long before anyone believes you still can. And then comes the shift. Subtle at first, like a breath of air entering a room that's been closed for too long. You start moving differently, thinking differently, refusing to stay chained to what broke you. Doubt becomes fuel, and every skeptical glance becomes a reminder of the greatness you are preparing to step back into. You train in the shadows, heal in the silence, and sharpen yourself in ways the world won't understand until later. This is the montage moment. The late nights, the early mornings, the sacrifices no one sees. The world is still doubting you, still expecting your story to fade out quietly, but you know a comeback is not announced. It is built. And with every silent victory, the flame inside you grows hotter, brighter, unstoppable. Then arrives the moment when the world begins to sense that something about you has changed. They can't explain it, can't define it, but they feel the shift when you walk into a room, when you speak with steadier confidence, when you breathe as if you finally remembered your own worth. People who once dismissed you start watching again, curiosity replacing judgment. They wonder how you're still standing, how you're still fighting, how you're still rising from the wreckage that once swallowed you. But they don't know the nights you cried, the prayers you whispered, the strength you borrowed from the hope that refused to die. Your comeback is no longer a possibility. It has become a promise your spirit intends to keep. And slowly, the doubt around you begins to crack. Finally, the world witnesses what you already knew deep inside. You were never finished. Your story was never over. Your comeback was written in the places where they thought you would break. You step into your new chapter with the quiet confidence of someone who has walked through fire without losing their soul. The same people who doubted you now stand in awe, unable to comprehend how you turned ruin into rebirth. But you don't need their validation anymore. You've learned that belief begins within you long before it ever reaches them. You rise not for applause, not for recognition, but because your destiny demanded it. And as you move forward, the world finally realizes what you have known all along. Comebacks aren't given. They are earned in silence, sharpened in doubt, and revealed in the moment you decide to rise again. Storms don't arrive to destroy you, they arrive to reveal you, and it always begins with that sudden shift in the air, the moment the sky darkens, and everything you took for granted starts to tremble. You can feel it before it happens, an uneasiness in your chest, a quiet warning that life is about to change. Then the storm hits, loud, violent, unforgiving, tearing through the parts of your life you thought were unshakable. People disappear, plans fall apart, the future seems to crack in your hands. And in that chaos, you're forced to confront the truth. Storms don't care about your comfort, they care about your growth. They strip away illusions, expose weaknesses, and demand honesty. What feels like destruction is often the moment the real you begins to surface, trembling but unbreakable, waiting to rise from the ruins stronger than before. In the heart of the storm, when everything feels unstable and every step feels uncertain, you meet the version of yourself you never knew existed. The world is loud, but inside you a strange stillness begins to form, the kind that only appears when life has knocked you to your knees. This is the moment the movie slows down, focusing on your eyes as they fill with fear, anger, and the stubborn spark of survival. You realize you can't run anymore, can't hide behind excuses, or pretend the storm isn't happening. You have to face it. You have to stand there, drenched and shaking, and choose to keep breathing. And in that choice, something inside you clicks. You begin to understand that storms don't test your strength. They show you the strength you forgot you had. As the winds howl and the rain hits harder, you start discovering the layers of yourself the calm never revealed. You notice the courage hiding behind your doubt, the resilience buried beneath your exhaustion, the fire burning beneath your fear. This is where transformation begins, not